I'm showing the audience that I feel like that. But if the camera's in here, if it's a close-up, you don't see any of this.
The man who made an entire generation scream with laughter is making headlines again. But this time, nobody's laughing. Daniel Stern. The name instantly conjures images of slapstick comedy, painted faces covered in feathers, and that unforgettable scream when a tarantula crawled across his face. For millions of people around the world, he's forever frozen in time as Marv Murchins, the bumbling burglar from Home Alone, who couldn't outsmart an 8-year-old kid. But what happened to Daniel Stern? Where has he been for the past few decades? And why is his name suddenly all over the news for reasons that have nothing to do with Kevin McCallister's booby traps? The answers will shock you. The transformation will stun you. And the recent events surrounding this beloved actor will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the man behind one of cinema's most iconic characters. The face we all remember. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you see him? That lanky frame stumbling through a suburban Chicago home. That distinctive voice narrating the wonder years. That expressive face contorting in pain as paint cans swing into his skull. Blowtorches singe his scalp, and ornaments pierce his bare feet. Daniel Stern wasn't just an actor in Home Alone. He was a physical comedian who put his body through hell to make us laugh. He was the perfect foil to Joe Pesci's hot-tempered Harry. He was the heart of the bumbling sticky bandits, and his comedic timing was absolutely flawless. Released in 1990, Home Alone became a cultural phenomenon that defined Christmas movies for an entire generation. It made $476 million worldwide and launched Macaulay Culkin into superstardom. But it also gave us Daniel Stern at his absolute best. Do you remember watching it for the first time? Do you remember laughing until your stomach hurt when Marv stepped on those ornaments? When he got hit in the face with an iron? When Kevin set his head on fire with a blowtorch? That was Daniel Stern. And for years, that's exactly how we wanted to remember him. The Hollywood trajectory that nobody saw coming. After Home Alone and its 1992 sequel, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, Daniel Stern had the world at his feet. He was a household name. Kids recognized him everywhere. Adults quoted his lines. He had successfully bridged the gap between television and film, having already narrated 6 seasons of The Wonder Years while building his movie career. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. While other actors from that era chased bigger roles, more money, and increased fame, Daniel Stern did something radical, something almost unheard of in Hollywood, something that would eventually lead to the shocking transformation we're about to reveal. He walked away, not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, deliberately, Daniel Stern began stepping back from the spotlight that had made him famous. He appeared in films like Bushwhacked in 1995, Very Bad Things in 1998, and had various television roles throughout the 2000s. But something had fundamentally changed. The question is, why? Why would someone at the peak of their career, with instant name recognition and the ability to command significant salaries, choose to fade into relative obscurity? The answer lies in what Daniel Stern was becoming when the cameras stopped rolling. And trust me, you won't believe the transformation, the reinvention nobody knew about. While you were rewatching Home Alone every Christmas, while you were introducing your kids to Marv and Harry's hilariously inept burglary attempts, Daniel Stern was undergoing a complete metamorphosis. He moved to a ranch in Ventura, California. Not a celebrity ranch with paparazzi hiding in bushes. Not a vacation home where he'd escape for weekends. A working ranch where he could pursue something he'd become passionate about during his years in Hollywood. Art sculpture, bronze casting, physical creation that had nothing to do with pratfalls or punchlines. "I'm a sculptor," Stern told People magazine in a recent interview, and those 3 words contain multitudes. This wasn't a hobby. This wasn't something he dabbled in between acting gigs. This had become his primary identity. The man who once made millions pretending to be hit by paint cans was now creating art with his hands. The face that millions of people recognized from their television screens was now covered in bronze dust and sculpting clay instead of makeup. Can you imagine that transition? Can you picture the discipline required to walk away from guaranteed paychecks and adoring fans to pursue something completely different? Something where your famous face doesn't matter, where your past success means nothing, where you have to prove yourself all over again. Daniel Stern, at 68 years old, looks nothing like the Marv you remember. Not because of age, though obviously time has passed, but because he's become someone entirely different. Someone focused, someone driven by a completely different passion. But this peaceful artistic transformation would soon collide with scandal in the most unexpected way. The phone call that changed everything. Imagine receiving a phone call about the most famous moment of your career decades after it happened. That's exactly what happened to Daniel Stern in late 2024. "I got a call from the people who own the Home Alone house," Stern revealed to People magazine during an interview published on Christmas Eve. The iconic house in Winnetka, Illinois, the actual location where Kevin McCallister defended his territory against bungling burglars, needed something special, and they wanted Daniel Stern to create it. "They asked if I would do a sculpture for the house, so I'm creating a sculpture of me and the spider." Let that sink in for a moment. The owners of one of the most famous houses in cinema history specifically sought out Daniel Stern, not as an actor, not for a public appearance, not for an autograph, but as an artist, as a sculptor capable of immortalizing one of the film's most memorable moments in bronze, the spider scene. You know the one. Macaulay Culkin's Kevin strategically places a tarantula on Marv's face, and Stern delivers that blood-curdling psycho-style scream that's been memed, parodied, and referenced countless times over the past 3 decades. "Which is going to be kind of crazy," Stern said about the sculpture. "So it'll be at the Home Alone house, so that Spider, whatever his name was, Charlie, is being immortalized in bronze." For many actors, this would be a full-circle moment, a celebration of past glory, a chance to reconnect with the work that defined their career. But for Daniel Stern, it represented something more profound. Validation that his artistic transformation was real, that he wasn't just a former actor playing at being a sculptor. He was a sculptor who happened to have once been an actor. "I've been looking at myself in my studio, and I've made myself a lot handsomer than I actually am in real life," he shared with characteristic humor. Just why not? This would be his first self-portrait. The first time he'd turn that artist's eye on himself and try to capture not just his physical appearance, but perhaps the essence of a moment that had defined his place in pop culture history. It should have been a heartwarming story, a redemptive arc, a beloved actor returning to his most famous role through his new artistic passion. Instead, it became the backdrop for a scandal that nobody saw coming. The incident that shocked everyone. December 10th, 2024, the holiday season, a time when families gather to watch Home Alone for the 100th time. A time when Daniel Stern's image appears on television screens around the world, bringing joy and laughter to millions. And on that date, at a hotel in Camarillo, California, Daniel Stern was cited for allegedly soliciting a prostitute. Let that information sit with you for a moment. Process it. Try to reconcile it with the image you have of this man. According to TMZ, the 68-year-old actor received a citation, not an arrest, but a citation, for soliciting a prostitute. In California, this is a misdemeanor offense that can result in up to 6 months in jail or a $1,000 fine if convicted. The timing couldn't have been more jarring. Just days before the heartwarming revelation about the Home Alone house sculpture. Just weeks before Christmas. Just when everyone's nostalgic feelings about the movie were at their peak. How do you process this information? How do you reconcile the bumbling, lovable Marv with allegations of solicitation? How do you square the devoted artist creating bronze sculptures with someone allegedly caught trying to hire an escort? These are uncomfortable questions. Questions that don't have easy answers. Questions that force us to confront the complex reality of who celebrities really are when the cameras stop rolling. The silence that speaks volumes. Daniel Stern has not spoken publicly about the citation. No statement from his representatives. No social media explanation. no interview addressing the allegations. Just silence. And that silence is deafening because we live in an era where everyone feels compelled to explain, justify, and defend every action, where publicists craft carefully worded statements within hours of any controversy, where celebrities go on apology tours before formal charges are even filed. But Daniel Stern? Nothing. Is this the response of someone who's truly left Hollywood behind? Someone who no longer feels the need to manage his public image or control the narrative? Or is it the silence of someone hoping the story will blow over if he just stays quiet? We don't know, and that uncertainty makes the story even more compelling and troubling. What we do know is that this wasn't his first concerning incident in recent months. In October 2024, Stern was rushed to a hospital in Ventura County after suffering an unspecified medical emergency. He was later released and, according to his representative, was now doing well. But he never spoke publicly about that either. No details about what happened. No explanation of what kind of medical emergency required hospitalization. Just another gap in the public's knowledge of who Daniel Stern is today. Are these incidents connected? Is there a larger pattern here? Is the man who walked away from Hollywood to pursue art struggling with something we can't see? Or are these simply unfortunate events in the life of a private person who happens to have once been famous? The man behind the character. Here's what makes this story so difficult to process. We don't really know Daniel Stern. None of us do. We know Marv Murchins. We know the narrator from The Wonder Years. We know the characters he played. But the actual human being named Daniel Stern? He's been intentionally private for years. He's been married to his wife Laura Matos since 1980, an impressive 45-year marriage in an industry where relationships rarely survive the pressure. They have 3 children together. He left Los Angeles for Ventura County specifically to escape the Hollywood spotlight and focus on family and art. By all accounts, he built a quiet, meaningful life away from the chaos of fame. He found something he was passionate about beyond acting. He created space for himself to grow and change. So what happened? What leads a 68-year-old man with a seemingly stable life and family to allegedly solicit a prostitute at a hotel? Is it loneliness despite the marriage? Is it an addiction of some kind? Is it something else entirely that we can't begin to understand from the outside? The uncomfortable truth is that we may never know, and perhaps we don't have a right to know. The transformation we can see. Setting aside the scandal for a moment, let's talk about what Daniel Stern actually looks like today, because that was the original question, wasn't it? At 68 years old, Stern bears the marks of time that we all do. The face is weathered, creased with lines that weren't there in 1990. The hair has thinned and grayed. The frame that once bounced through booby traps with elastic energy has settled into something more substantial, more grounded. But look closer. Look at photographs of him in his studio, surrounded by his sculptures. There's something in his expression that wasn't there during his acting days. A focus, an intensity, a sense of purpose that seems different from the performative energy required on a film set. His hands, once famous for comedic gestures and slapstick reactions, are now the hands of a craftsman, calloused, stained, strong. These are hands that shape clay and metal, that create permanent objects rather than temporary performances. This is the transformation that matters. Not the gray hair or the wrinkles, but the fundamental shift in identity, from performer to creator, from actor to artist, from someone who embodied other people's visions to someone who manifests his own. "I've made myself a lot handsomer than I actually am in real life," he joked about his self-portrait. But maybe that's not vanity. Maybe that's an artist's prerogative to see himself not as he is, but as he wishes to be remembered. The questions we should be asking. The solicitation citation raises uncomfortable questions that extend beyond Daniel Stern himself. Questions about aging, masculinity, celebrity, privacy, and redemption. Why do we feel so betrayed when celebrities we loved as children turn out to be flawed humans? Is it fair to hold them to higher standards than we hold ourselves or our neighbors? What happens to the ego when someone goes from being recognized everywhere to being essentially anonymous. Does fame create psychological dependencies that are difficult to break? Can someone truly walk away from that kind of validation without consequences? And what about second chances? If Stern is convicted of a misdemeanor, does that erase decades of bringing joy to millions? Does it negate his artistic transformation? Does it mean we can never watch Home Alone the same way again? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're genuine dilemmas that we as a society struggle with constantly. We want our heroes to be perfect. We want clean narratives with satisfying endings. We want to be able to enjoy art without having to think about the complicated humans who created it. But life doesn't work that way. People are messy. Circumstances are complex. And sometimes the person who made you laugh as a child makes very different headlines decades later. The sculpture nobody's talking about. Amidst all the scandal and speculation, there's still that bronze sculpture being created. Right now, somewhere in Ventura, California, Daniel Stern is working with clay and metal to immortalize the spider scene from Home Alone. He's looking at reference photos of himself from 34 years ago. He's studying that moment of terror on Marv's face. He's trying to capture in permanent form a fleeting second of cinematic history. What must that be like? To have your artistic expression forced back toward the very past you've been trying to move beyond? To create a memorial to your former self while dealing with very present scandals? Or is the sculpture actually therapeutic? A way to reconcile who he was with who he's become? A chance to literally reshape that image into something he can control? The sculpture will eventually be installed at the Home Alone house in Winnetka. Tourists will take selfies with it. Children who weren't born when the movie came out will point and laugh. Daniel Stern's face, frozen in bronze horror, as a spider crawls across it, will become a permanent fixture. But which Daniel Stern will they be looking at? The beloved actor? The troubled man from recent headlines? The artist who created the piece? All of them? None of them? The broader context of child star films. Here's something worth considering. Home Alone was Macaulay Culkin's film, but it launched everyone involved into a different stratosphere of fame. And we've seen what that kind of sudden, intense recognition can do to people, especially child stars, but also to the adults surrounding them. Culkin himself went through well-documented struggles with fame, family, and finding his identity beyond Kevin McCallister. Joe Pesci continued his successful career, but has also been notoriously private about his personal life. The film's director, Chris Columbus, went on to helm other massive franchises. And Daniel Stern? He tried to escape, tried to become someone else, tried to build a life defined by his own choices rather than public expectations. But can you ever really escape something that's culturally significant? Can you ever truly shed an identity that millions of people around the world associate with you? Is it possible to be former actor Daniel Stern? Or will you always be Daniel Stern from Home Alone, no matter what else you accomplish? These questions apply to every actor who's ever been part of something bigger than themselves. But they feel particularly poignant for Stern, who seemed to work so hard to answer them by walking away entirely. What we still don't know. The citation from December 10th exists. That's a fact. But here's what we don't know. We don't know the full circumstances. Was this a sting operation? Was he targeted specifically? What evidence led to the citation? We don't know his state of mind. Was this out of character or part of a pattern? Was he going through something that might explain, if not excuse, the behavior? We don't know the impact on his family. How is his wife of 45 years processing this? What are his children dealing with? How does a family navigate public scandal at this stage of life? We don't know if there will be legal consequences. Will he be convicted? Will he fight the charge? Will there be a trial or a quiet settlement? And most importantly, we don't know who Daniel Stern really is today, because the truth is probably far more complex than either the beloved actor of our memories or the troubled figure in recent headlines. The Home Alone legacy in 2025. Every Christmas, without fail, Home Alone plays on televisions around the world. New generations discover it. Parents show it to their children. The film has transcended its 1990s origins to become a timeless holiday tradition. But traditions get complicated when reality intrudes. Can we separate the art from the artist? Should we? Does learning uncomfortable truths about someone who brought us joy change our relationship with that joy? These are the questions facing Home Alone fans now. Do you skip the Marv scenes? Do you feel guilty laughing at his pratfalls? Do you explain to your kids that people are complicated? Or do you just enjoy the movie and compartmentalize the rest? There's no right answer, but the questions themselves reveal how deeply these performances have embedded themselves in our cultural consciousness. Daniel Stern isn't just an actor who played a role. For many people, he's a genuine part of their childhood, their holiday traditions, their family memories. And now those memories are tinged with something uncomfortable, something that doesn't fit the narrative we want. The path forward. So where does Daniel Stern go from here? What does the path forward look like for a 68-year-old facing a potential misdemeanor conviction and public scrutiny he'd spent years avoiding? He could lean into the scandal, give interviews, try to explain or justify. But that seems unlikely given his years of choosing privacy over publicity. He could disappear completely, abandon even his artistic pursuits, retreat fully from public life. But the Sculpture Commission suggests he's not ready to do that either. Or he could do what he's been doing, continue living his life, creating his art, dealing with his consequences privately, and refusing to engage with the public's need for answers and absolution. That last option seems most consistent with the Daniel Stern who left Hollywood for a ranch in Ventura. The one who found identity beyond performance. The one who, for better or worse, stopped caring what the world thought of him. But here's the real question. After everything, the solicitation citation, the medical emergency, the years of silence, can Daniel Stern still find redemption? Can he complete that bronze sculpture and have it represent something meaningful rather than something tainted? The uncomfortable truth. Here's what Daniel Stern looks like today. He looks like a complicated human being who made people laugh, who walked away from fame, who found new purpose in art, and who also apparently made serious mistakes in judgment. He looks like someone who can't be reduced to a single moment, whether that's a scream with a spider on his face or a citation at a California hotel. He looks like someone who challenges our need for simple narratives and uncomplicated heroes. He looks, in other words, like most of us would if our worst moments were made public and our most beloved accomplishments were constantly compared to our current failings. The transformation of Daniel Stern isn't just about aging or career changes. It's about the impossibility of escaping your past, the complexity of human nature, and the painful reality that people we admire are capable of disappointing us. You won't believe what Daniel Stern looks like today? Maybe you will. Maybe he looks exactly like what happens when fame, aging, privacy, scandal, and artistic reinvention collide in one messy human package. The bronze sculpture will be completed. It will be installed at the Home Alone house. Tourists will take photos, and somewhere in Ventura, Daniel Stern will continue his private life, changed by fame, but no longer defined by it. Known to millions, but truly known by very few. That's the real transformation. And believe it or not, it's far more complicated than any booby trap Kevin McCallister ever designed.